Welcome to the Real Appreciation Podcast. I'm David Clair-Bennett, and with me today is a fellow screenwriter, actor, director, as well as published author. He is most known for writing movies such as Violent Night and, yes, of course, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Pat Casey.
Hello, good to be here, David.
Awesome to have you here. We've been trying to set this up for a while now, and here we are.
I know being a professional writer means having homework every night for the rest of your life. So I've been under deadline. That's why I've been reluctant to schedule a podcast until I had a little break in my schedule where people weren't bugging me every 5 minutes. Where's the script? Where's the script? You know how it goes.
I do. Deadlines are fun, but exciting, but also awful and terrible and ruin your life.
But necessary,
Crucial,
Deadline
yes.
has a way of focusing the mind. When I talk to some, amateur screenwriters who will be like, oh, I've been working on this script for 4 years. I'm like, oh, good God. I would, it's like, you got to finish that. You got to set a deadline and hit it.
Here's 2 months. Go.
Exactly. And then, you can come back to it and make it better. But it's like, there's something to be said for just being like, we gotta get a version. What's the best thing I can come up with right now? That's the difference between a professional and a hobbyist, I think.
I recently did some press work through this very show for Lionsgate's Borderlands film. We're not going to talk about how that's doing or not, but
I haven't seen it yet.
Me neither. But hey, I know everyone worked very hard on these movies, so kudos. But they were gracious enough to land me an interview with Benjamin Byron Davis, who's most known for voicing dutViolent in the Red Dead Redemption video game series. But the reason I bring this up to you is because he was telling me how important it was for him to stay true to the source material for the Borderlands games to the movies. Now, I'm curious how important it was for you to do the same thing, but this time as a screenwriter as opposed to an actor, but with the Sonic franchise.
I mean, with Sonic, it was an interesting thing because, like, when we started on the movie, it was at Sony. It was before it had moved to Paramount. But the version of the movie that we ended up doing is very similar to what we developed at Sony. We sort of moved over to Paramount and didn't change much. But Sony, I mean, I've seen people complain online of like, why are there these humans here? It's like, why isn't this fully animated? It's like Sony was not interested in making a fully animated Sonic movie that took place fully in the Sonic universe. Which, I mean, Sonic is like, there have been so many versions of Sonic and the canon's kind of all over the place. So it's hard to say like, oh, this is Sonic canon and this is not, because it's like very self-contradictory throughout. But Sony wanted to make a live action Sonic movie where Sonic is on Earth and has a human friend. Like they were like, what's he doing on Earth? Who's his human friend? Those are their big questions. So it was never going to be super true to the source material. So we tried to be as true as possible to the feeling of the source material, and to make you as an audience member feel the way that I felt when I was 11 years old playing Sonic on the Sega Genesis. Like that was just trying to recreate that feeling. While not, being true to what from the source material we could, it's like Dr. Robotnik was going to be an evil scientist genius who builds robots. I mean, we flirted with the idea of even his robots having little animals inside, but ultimately we couldn't sell that to everybody. They were like, this seems too stupid. We were like, well, we tried, but I always liked that element of the games. And I mean, maybe someday in one of the sequels we'll get some, he smashes open a robot and a little squirrel or a bird flies out.
You also write a lot of your films alongside Josh Miller, and I think it's important to always give credit to other screenwriters because it seems like only one gets a lot of the credit sometimes. But again, you write a lot of your films alongside Josh, so talk to me about how you two got connected and made this seemingly lifelong collaboration work so well together.
So Josh and I mean, yeah, we write, all our movies together, and then we sort of have some side stuff we do separately just so we're not like in each other's faces all the time, but though we get along fabulously.
Right.
But we first met in junior high in detention, and I mean, if not for him, I probably would have never wound up in show business, even though I always loved movies and TV, and I loved storytelling and books and comic books and kind of everything. But when I met him in detention, And then he started telling me about, he was like, oh, I'm writing this epic sci-fi novel, and I'm making my own movies, and I'm going to move to Hollywood and make big movies when I grow up. And I was just like, I mean, we're from, Minnesota. Like there's no real show business in Minnesota outside of like, little theater. But like, so I was just like, wow, that's like a thing. That's a goal you can even have. Like it blew my mind. And then I sort of got sucked into it. I mean, I already I had the desire, but somehow he gave me permission to like think about it on a larger scale. Um, and we ended up, along with our other friends, we actually had our own TV show in our hometown of Bloomington, Minnesota. There was like a local educational cable channel, is what it was called. And there doesn't seem to be anything like this like anywhere else. Because there was a public access channel, but this was not the same channel. It was a thing run by Tom Ringdahl, who worked for the school district, and he basically ran this whole TV station himself. And he would get grants and stuff to buy cameras, and teen volunteers would help him do everything. And it was basically, the channel existed, to film football games and school concerts and stuff. But some of the teen volunteers had started a late night comedy show because Tom let them. It was like late Friday night, and they're like, we're just going to go on TV, and we're going to take callers and be funny. I mean, they might not have even asked his permission. They just started doing it and then got his permission afterwards. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So me and my friends watched that show. All the like junior high kids did. And we came to the studio and we're like, hey, you should give us a show like this, except ours will be good. And Tom was like, why don't you just make some stuff for the show we already have? Why don't you join the cast of this show? So that's what we did. And pretty soon we kind of took over when we were like 14. So we had a TV show all through high school, Josh and I, every week, an hour-long TV show every Friday night. And that's where we really got a lot of our training. And yeah, and then afterwards we were sort of like, well, time to go our separate ways, and went off to different colleges. But then we just, those were the early days of like AOL instant message. And we found ourselves chatting online all the time of like, hey man, I got this idea for a movie. It's like, hey man, I got this idea for a movie. We started writing stuff together and then shooting like super indie movies every summer during college, where we'd have a budget of like a couple of $100.
Right.
And yeah, and then we felt like we got good at it. We were like, let's go to Hollywood and become superstars. And then, and then we were not superstars for a long time. It took a while to crack in, but now we've got it going pretty good. The Sonic movies and Violent Night, and it's we're much closer to where we set out to be.
Well, I'm always amazed at how many films have scenes that got cut or almost got cut. So are there any scenes that you know of in either the Sonic films that almost didn't make the cut?
Oh, that almost didn't make the cut. Oh, I don't know. That did make it in. I mean, there's always, because of the fact that we're the writers, it's like the things I most remember, the things that were in the script that like never got shot even, or earlier versions with like wildly different versions of the movie. But then I'm also like sort of like, I always feel like I shouldn't even talk about them in interviews, because then people see them and they're like, oh, the movie almost had this. And I'm the writer. It's not my job to be making news about the Sonic movies.
It's okay.
But like, I don't know, for Sonic 2, it's like, I remember, yeah, like Josh and I were like, we got to get Tails' plane into this movie. I feel like if we have Sonic riding on the wing of Tails' plane, the fans will love it. Because it's like Sonic 2 was my favorite game, and I wanted to get some iconic imagery from that into it. As soon as we brought up the plane, like Jeff was like, yes, the plane. But then the giant Robotnik mech, like I think Jeff was into that too, and Toby, but we definitely got some pushback from Jeff's the director, Jeff Fowler. We definitely got some pushback from higher up in the studio of just like, why a giant robot? what is Dr. Robot? Why would he build a giant robot? What's he trying to do with it? And we're like, don't worry about it, man. It's like he's trying to kill Sonic's friends. He's in a giant robot because he builds robots. He's Dr. Robotic. What else would he do with ultimate power?
Right.
And luckily we won that argument. And I was very, very happy with how that whole sequence came out. Like Jeff and Jim Carrey's this funny run and then seeing the robot like bending over and huffing and puffing for air. I was so pleased.
What was going through your mind when you found out you would be writing a Sonic movie?
So that we actually found out, Josh and I had been working on this show called 12 Deadly Days. It was created by our friends Chris Kalari and Jen Raitt, and we were sort of brought in as veteran showrunners, which we thought was pretty funny because we were coming off of Golan the Insatiable. So we weren't exactly veterans. We were kind of new to being a show. But we were doing that show, which we were shooting out in Pomona, at this like creepy abandoned mental hospital. Actually, we like shot the whole show there, and it was a horror show, but we didn't know we were going to be shooting it when we wrote it. So we didn't have any episodes that took place in a hospital, even though that's where we were the whole time. So we had to make that hospital look like a diner or a living room or all the things for the episodes we'd actually written. But I was actually directing an episode of 12 Deadly Days. Like we had a series of meetings about Sonic, and we'd pitched to Saga, we'd pitched to Neil Moritz, we'd pitched to Jeff Fowler and Tim Miller, pitched ourselves really, more so than even our story, because what the movie we ended up doing was not the story we'd been pitching. It was like a new story that we came up with Jeff Fowler after we'd been hired. And but we'd had all these meetings while we were doing this show. So we had to really be focusing on this show because it was taking up, all of our time. We were staying in like a motel next to the set so that we'd stay there all night, go to sleep, wake up, and just like crawl back to the set and drink coffee and get back to work. It was very all consuming. That was a show where we were shooting an entire episode every 3 days. And it was like an anthology show. So it's like every 3 days we had a new cast, new sets. It was really quite intense, and we didn't really have a lot of money, so we had to make up for it with a lot of gumption and cleverness. But I was directing an episode of that. I was on my last day of shooting it and coming up on the climax, and I felt like I'd run out of time. Like some stuff earlier in the day had taken longer to shoot than I thought it was gonna. I thought I wanted to be done with this sequence by lunch, and it took like 3 hours after lunch to finish it. And I was really frustrated. We were getting ready to shoot this big climax, which I was like, we're going to have to basically do this all in a oneer, you guys. We're going to have 3 cameras going, but actors, I need you to run through the entire scene without stopping and like nail it. We got to get this like in 2 takes or we're screwed. So I was feeling very frustrated. And then, we paused for the DP and his grips to like light this final thing, and phone rang. Actually, I didn't even answer the phone because I was directing. Josh answered his phone and ran over to me and was like, put us on. It was our agent saying that we had gotten the Sonic job. We were gonna write Sonic, and like I felt like I was going to have a heart attack from this show, but then hearing that, it was like Popeye getting his spinach. And I was like, all right, let's go. And went back and shot the climax. It turned out good. That episode, by the way, it's 12 Deadly Days. It's on YouTube Premium. If you have YouTube TV, you can get it as well. And that episode was episode 8, I think, Elves Ascending. I'm quite proud of it. And it's also about Santa, which is ironic because we wasn't too long before we went and did Violent Night.
Well, you were speaking earlier about Jim Carrey, and I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan myself. I'd love to hear about your experiences working with him.
I mean, Jim's very cool. I mean, he's very weird, but in
a good way, yeah.
In a good way, I think. And he's got lots of crazy ideas. And sometimes you just have to rein him in a little bit, But like he's also got a great attitude about it. He's like, "What if I got shrunk down to the size of a mouse?" And he was like, "I mean, I don't think that makes any sense, Jim." And he was like, "Okay, never mind." In between Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, we went over to his penthouse on his birthday. Actually, we brought him a Dr. Robotnik birthday cake. Me and Josh and Neil Moritz and Jeff Fowler. And he gave us a tour and, showed us his paintings. But then we had a brainstorming session for Sonic 2 of like, we're like, here's kind of what we're thinking. And he was kind of giving us what he thought. And like the way he thinks about the character has definitely affected how we've written it moving forward. All the stuff he kind of came up with in the first movie, really, of just like Robotnik's emotional life. He like really does analyze it, that this guy just like has never experienced love. He's got like this intense hunger. I mean, it's like everything kind of stems from like an insane insecurity. So we like sort of absorbed all that. But like it's one of the top-notch experiences of my career was that brainstorming session with Jim where we were talking about ideas back and forth, and he would say something, Josh and I would suggest something on it, and then he would like do a full-on Jim Carrey size act out of it, like right across the couch from us. Like he was putting on like a Jim Carrey movie just for us. It was unbelievable.
That's amazing.
He really is a comic genius, and man, the stuff he can do with just like his face and his body, like I don't understand, especially like his face. He's like fully like an alien shapeshifter. If you watch his old clips from when he was really like an impressionist early in his stand-up career, and he would do impressions that was like not even like vocal impressions. He would like change his face just with his muscles. He would turn into Clint Eastwood fully. Like how does he do it? Other human beings don't seem to have that ability. Only Jim Carrey.
Well, let's talk about another fantastic film of yours, Violent Night. I just love the idea of blending Christmas and violence together. Listen, dude, I'm a horror screenwriter. I have this idea for years and years and years about making a Christmas horror theme movie. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
And there's room for more Christmas horror movies. I mean, there have been a bunch, but people love them because it's like Christmas movies. Everybody likes to watch Christmas movies around Christmas.
Yeah.
But like so many of them, I mean, some of them are a little saccharine, and like people who love horror, they want a break from just watching Miracle on 34th Street, or even like, Christmas Vacation, which is one I like to watch every year.
Well, how do you think Violent Night stands out in a somewhat crowded holiday movie genre?
I mean, part of the reason we wanted to do it is that we feel like there was like a limited number of Christmas action movies, actually. I mean, there's like Die Hard, like all the Shane Black movies are Christmas movies, but like only tangentially. Like they take place kind of at Christmas. There's a scene where they're, whatever. There's some Christmas decorations, but they're not really about Christmas. We thought it would be fun to do one that's a full-on action movie and a full-on Christmas movie. And it's not making fun of Christmas. It's embracing that it's a Christmas movie.
Right.
I mean, really the reason we did that movie is that it was an old idea. We did it as an episode of our show in high school. That was like our Christmas episode one year, is that the studio was taken over by terrorists, like we're really criminals. We had these like recurring criminal characters that we would do on the show. So they took us hostage, and then the criminals who were also us wearing hats and whatever disguises. We're hosting the live show, and meanwhile, like we were tied up on the roof, and Santa landed on the roof and discovered the situation, and then went around die-harding the whole episode. And we just thought it was such a funny idea that every once in a while we'd be like, maybe we can do that Die Hard Santa thing. But then we'd be like, no, it's too stupid. And around the time Sonic was coming out, we went in for a meeting with our team, our agents and managers, with like a list of ideas, because we were like, we should go out and try and sell something before Sonic comes out, just in case everybody hates Sonic. And we had a whole list of ideas, and I think Die Hard Santa wasn't even on it, but we like brought it up at the end of the meeting. We were like, oh, there's one other thing, like Die Hard Santa. And they were like, Die Hard Santa, what's that? And I mean, it was a very fun pitch to do. We went around and pitched the whole town. And it was funny because it's like you basically get the whole idea within like the first 30 seconds. Like it's a very pitchable movie in that sense. So you're like, what if Die Hard, but instead of a cop, it's just Santa, the real Santa. And they're like, wait, the real Santa? And it's like, yes, the real Santa. And they're like, how's he dressed? He's wearing his Santa suit.
As we wind down here, you and I, as we know, are both fellow screenwriters, and we know just as much as anyone else out there how hard it can be to get your scripts read or seen or even acknowledged by someone. And I'm not going to ask you the generic, how does one get their script read? Because I'm not sure there's really one answer to that. But what advice would you give to a fellow writer that may help them keep their head up and keep pushing forward in their craft?
I mean, yeah, I don't know how you get a script read. It took us a long time to break through. And
yeah, I'm 12 years myself, still going.
Yeah. And I don't know ultimately even how we did. I mean, I think it's good to make your own stuff. If you can manage it, get together with some friends and like make a low budge movie, but try and make the script just as good and just as polished as if you were spending $80 million on it. You don't have $80 million. But make the script that good and then spend, $1,000 on it, borrow equipment and get everybody and buy people pizza to thank them for helping you.
I've done it.
Doing that, I think, like, and finishing it and showing it to people and watching them watch it, like, is the best way you can learn and hone your skills. I mean, and then just writing scripts too is like, finish the scripts, let somebody read it, possibly just put it in a drawer afterwards, but it's an educational experience and then come back to it later. I mean, I don't know how this whole world of online like contests and stuff, it's like, I don't understand any of that. We never did any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, our path we probably could have done a lot better. We did not pursue representation as hard as we should have, but I don't also know, maybe we weren't ready. We came out here after having made all these indie movies, some of which turned out pretty good. I mean, Hey, Stop Stabbing Me is a movie we made when we were 21. And it just had a 20-year anniversary Blu-ray release. I mean, partially because now they can put from the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog and Violent Night on it. Otherwise, I don't know if it would have gotten this big a release. But there was a 10-year anniversary release too, and that was before Sonic, So that has lived on. We made these movies that were pretty good, and then we didn't know how to translate that into breaking into Hollywood. And we came out here and did odd jobs. I worked on sets. I drove trucks and painted theatrical flats and light carpentry and just kind of hung around and tried to make friends. And then eventually one of our friends got us in for the meeting with Fox that led to Golan the Insatiable, which was really our breakthrough, was getting Golan the Insatiable going, which was a late night 15-minute cartoon that aired in the middle of the night on Saturday on Fox. And but it was a show, and we were like now kind of in the system. That allowed us to get reps who believed in us and then put us in front of other people. I mean, and then just like, I guess my other advice in general in life is to not be afraid to like say what you want or what your goal is, even if it feels too big. I think sometimes people are afraid to say like, I want to do this, because people are going to be like, oh yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. And back in detention, Josh was like, I'm going to go to Hollywood and make big movies. I'd never heard anyone say that before. And I was like, oh, I bet I could do that too. I got to be twice as smart as this Josh guy. If he can do it, I can do it. But then coming out here, we got Golan, which was kind of a miracle. But then like we were getting more meetings, and we would go into those meetings hoping to get a big movie because that's what we wanted to do. But it always would turn out to be like, oh, what other ideas do you guys have for short cartoons? People were even trying to be like, oh, you should do like webisodes. How do you guys feel about doing 2-minute cartoons? And we were like, Josh and I huddled up, and we were like, we got to stop. Like, we don't want to do 2-minute web cartoons. We want to do big movies. We got to start telling people in these meetings when they're like, oh, what's your next short cartoon? And we'd be like, man, that short cartoon can go to hell. We want to make big movies. What big movies do you guys want to make? We should write it for you. And that worked. I mean, when we booked Sonic, we really didn't have any movies we could point to. And then we booked this big blockbuster movie just because we said we wanted it. We said we could do it, and we were convincing I mean, because we're smart and funny, so it was like, oh, these guys seem smart and funny. They seem like they know what they're doing, and we did enough. You
Yeah.
figure out what you're doing as you do it, but don't be afraid to like set big goals and tell people what the goals are, even because then it's like they might be like, oh, this guy wants to do that. I have this opportunity to do that. Maybe I'll give this guy a shot. I mean, and then the reason they're hiring you is because they can pay you less than the person who's more qualified for it. But that's how you do it. That's how you earn it. It's like we did Sonic for peanuts, but now we're getting paid more.
I'll be respectful of your time and I won't keep you much longer, but this podcast is all about gratitude and appreciation. And one of the most important things I do with my daily life is say 3 things I'm grateful for before I go to bed and when I wake up. So I want to ask you, Pat, what are 3 things you're grateful for right now?
I mean, I'm grateful for my family, who are all relatively healthy. I'm grateful for having a great writing partner I can really rely on. I'm grateful for, I don't know, kind of everything. I feel like life's going pretty decent, Uh, so I'm happy for that. I'm grateful for my health. I feel like that's the biggest thing. So knock on wood that continues to be all right.
I hope you're healthy for a very long time, man. I'm very grateful for you doing this.
I mean, happy to be here, David. This is fun.
So where can people find you online?
Oh, I'm on Twitter as Pat_Casey, like letter Casey, rather than my name spelled out. It's a terrible Twitter handle. I'm on Instagram as Pat Casey Superstar. I think that's my name on Threads as well. I don't know. I've been trying to use Threads more because Twitter sucks so much now, but I haven't really been sticking with it yet.
Well,
I'm also just like, I don't really post a whole ton.
I'm David Clair-Bennett. He is Pat Casey. Make sure you follow Pat, and I will find all the socials you just mentioned and list them in the description below. And make sure you keep your eye out on the next Sonic movie coming out not too far in the distant future. Thanks for listening to Real Appreciation. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. And again, thank you so much, Pat, for your time.
No problem. Happy to be here.